It doesn't matter how big your plant is, the only thing that you need to be concerned about is how big the root ball is. Your leaf size can look like this, or like this, but if your roots are tiny, then you need a tiny size pot. Think of it like this. Imagine your roots just being compressed down to the size of your fist. If all your roots are like this, then you need to find the perfect size pot that can fit just your fist. Not too big, not too small, but a pretty snug fit. Some roots will compress to this, others will compress to this. It's your job to find the right size pot for those roots. And maybe your roots are even smaller. Not this, not this. Probably this. Now I do think that this is a good guide for beginners because it puts you on the more conservative side, but eventually as you gain experience and confidence, you'll be able to expand the size of that pot and really gauge how big you can go without your plant suffering from root rot. This is a small form Monstera that you've probably seen in some of my videos, and it has been suffering a lot of abuse, so I need to repot this. I've been growing these roots out for a couple months now, and I need to get it into soil because the new leaf came out in water, and in my experience, whenever that starts to happen without proper nutrients and proper support, the plant starts to revert extremely quickly. I want to pot this Monstera, but the problem is the stem is so long that the roots are coming up above the soil line. So what I'm going to do is just remove some of the stem. I'm going to make the cut here. I still have 2 nodes with a lot of healthy roots, and now I have this really healthy wet stick cutting that has a growth point here and a growth point here. In fact, I'm going to make another cut. Now I've got 3 plants. I have had experience with rot in this plant, so I'm just going to put out some sulfur powder, dip the ends. Oops. Whoopsie. And I'll hope for the best. I want to get this plant started on a plank, so I'll stick this in here. Fill in the bottom. Finding the back of my plant, which is this side here. And I'll prop it up. Once I do that, I'll just manage to fill in the rest. Pot this cutting with it. Pot this cutting too. And I'll keep filling it. The next question is, I bought a pretty battered Monstera lately and a leaf fell off the stem. Should I prune down that stem or just leave it growing? That's completely up to you as long as you have a good understanding of your plant's anatomy. So this is a petiole that was left on my plant, and the leaf already had a decent pest infestation, and it actually had pretty serious signs of mechanical damage as well. So instead of wasting all that time with just treating the leaf, I just decided to cut it off. So really, you only have to decide, is this too unsightly for me to leave on the plant? You could cut it here towards the base of the stem, but I probably wouldn't go any lower. And if you do decide to leave it, it's fine. It's still photosynthesizing, albeit not as much, and it is helping the plant. This is a Monstera Esqueleto that I just really haven't been taking care of at all. I got it last year at a going out of business plant sale, and it actually came as just this stick in this pot. And it was really interesting how they decided to plant it with leca on the bottom, followed by perlite with a layer of moss on top. I don't think I've ever seen anyone try to plant it like this, but you can see the roots. They're doing really healthy. My main issue with this is that the algae growth became so bad on the inside of the pot. I decided to put a sock over it, which was really helpful in stopping the algae, but then I couldn't really see where the water level was, and that made me lazy, so I would check less often. That's why I'm getting really crispy leaves out of this. On top of that, it just hasn't been getting the nutrients that it needs. It's been in the same pot for a year, and I really haven't been fertilizing it. So finally, it's time. I am very happy with the roots. I do like this technique because it really avoids all of the hassle of getting the moss off of the plant. With the leca and perlite, you can really just plop this into any pot and it should start growing right away. The stem down here is fine, it's firm, and I don't see any signs of rot at all, so once it's in a pot and I start fertilizing it more frequently, I shouldn't have any issues with this plant. I do want to monitor the roots, so I'm going to go with this clear pot, and hopefully it treats me well. Normally I would give this plant support, but since it's my first Esqueleto, I'm going to give it a little bit more time to get more familiar with the growth pattern and see what kind of leaves it can put out without it starting to revert in size. The next question is, can I get an update video? No, No, you cannot, because that plant is in the garbage. Seriously, this is probably the video that I'm most proud of so far. It took me almost 2 years to make this thing, and I just had so much fun doing it. I really love the fact that I got to craft a whole storyline around this plant, and it made the whole process really special. But it was the process that was special, not the plant. By the end of the 2 years, I was so tired of this thing, I was very happy to throw it out. But as you might know, I had thrips. I've made a video about that, and the thrips got into the string of hearts, and it immediately started to take a downturn, and without a bat of an eye, I just took the whole thing down and hucked it in the garbage as fast as I could. I still have my original string of hearts that I need to keep cutting back every year. If I really did want to make another one, I could easily do that, but honestly, I just don't think I have the space or the will to try something like that again. I think I understand why people want to watch update videos. It seems like it could be a proof of concept to see that the methods that I'm actually using are actually working long term, but I really don't get attached to my plants in that way. I'm perfectly happy to experiment with a plant, get a great storyline out of it, and then give it away when I'm finished. As I continue this channel, of course you'll be able to see plants that you've seen in the past, but if it doesn't make a great storyline that could turn into an entertaining video, you're probably not going to see an update video for that plant. The next question says, can you please explain why the tips of the leaves would be turning black on a healthy Monstera? I don't know. I have no idea. It's extremely challenging to diagnose plants online, and for the most part, it's almost impossible to do that through text. It could literally be anything. Overwatering, underwatering, not enough sun, too much sun, pests. But what I will say is check your roots, understand your own habits, and think about recent changes to the plants for the last 3 to 4 months. I can do my best to diagnose problems on Instagram, but that's provided you're able to send pictures or videos of your plants and explaining a very detailed history of the plant. If I don't know where the plant has come from, how long you've had it, what kind of recent changes there are, then there's no way for me to figure out what kind of behaviors are happening in your home that's leading up to this. This new plant that I got recently is a Philodendron Summer Glory, and it's a cross between a Gloriosum and a Macaulay's Finale. It's my first crawling plant. I'm pretty excited to have it, but there was 2 stems in the pot. Both of them were facing opposite directions, so what I need to do is I need to take it out, and I want to get them in a longer pot facing the same direction. So if your leaves are turning black, first most important thing you should do is check your roots. There's a really interesting phenomena that I've noticed that when people start to learn more about plants and they are actively taking steps to make their plant healthier, the more attention they pay to it, the more they end up watering their plant. So it's this weird learning curve that beginners with their plants do perfectly fine, but as you get into that intermediate stage, you start to kill a lot more plants. You pay too much attention to them, you overlove them, you inspect every single tiny little scratch and bump, and in the end, you tend to end up doing something that does more harm than good to your plant. So if you're watching this and you feel like you're that person who's going from the beginner stage into the intermediate stage, that's something you really have to watch out for. Take your time, develop a good schedule with your plants, and you should be okay. Don't panic if you've just got this plant and it's adjusting to a new environment, and don't be afraid to do nothing, because sometimes that is the best answer. Now this is weird. I feel like I've gotten down to the point where if I start ripping, it's not going to end well for this plant, but since these 2 are going in different directions, what I could do is I could just fold them together, and if I wrap them, they might be able to start traveling more in the same direction. So instead of pushing my luck, I might just try and do that. I was going to go with a super long container, but since the roots are a lot smaller than I thought they would have been, I'm just going to go with this one that's about half the size. I want to keep some of the soil that was in the old plant, so I'm going to try to mix it about half and half throughout the whole plant. And because this container is terracotta, it should help with drainage and keeping the roots a little more healthy. So I'll fold these in like this. I'm planting it towards the end of this pot so that they can run together in the same direction. And the final touch will just be to add some Velcro tape to keep the two sides going into the same direction. And we got it. Get yourself a wooden dowel, stick it in the soil, and push it all the way down until it reaches the bottom of the pot. This will give you a good indication of if your plant is actually draining properly and ready to be watered again. You can take your finger and check the top 2 inches, but in some cases the top 2 inches are dry and the bottom is completely soaking wet. So I really recommend that you start practicing with this wooden dowel to make sure that you know when your plant is dry, how frequently you need to water it, so that you get a better idea of how not to overwater your plant. Thanks again for watching these videos. Like it if it was helpful, and consider subscribing. See you next time.